Now, the Sony PlayStation is definitely one of my top 5 favourite consoles, and with me just grabbing a new PS1, I thought it'd be a perfect time for me to make a video on it. Now, just like all these videos, we're going to talk about the console, talk about the hardware, talk about some accessories, and then we'll finish off with some games. Now, around 2 years ago, I had an original PlayStation 1, and over time the laser just started wearing down to the point where it just didn't read games anymore, so I got rid of it for parts. And recently I decided to buy myself another PlayStation, but I wanted to get a PS1 this time around, as this is the one I had as a kid, and these consoles tend to last longer. But going back to this system, I've definitely missed a lot of these games, which we'll talk about later. But for now, let's talk about the hardware. Now, there's loads of release dates for the PlayStation, so I'm just going to say the first one, which was Japan, which launched on the 3rd of December 1994, and a few years later in 2000, on the 7th of July, the PS1 came out in Japan. Now, there were lots of small different revisions with the PlayStation consoles, removing little things like parallel ports, and just things that weren't used to try and cut down the cost. But the most interesting model of PS1 is the SCPH-1001 model, which was actually at the time one of the best CD players on the market, and to this day, a lot of fans still like to use this as a CD player. Let's talk about the PlayStation 1, or as many people like to call it, the PlayStation 1 Slim. Now, the PlayStation 1 was sold in 2000 along with the PS2, as the PS2 was just quite hard to get hold of, so Sony made the PS1 to sort of sell these two consoles together, and it was a bit cheaper, so it was still a nice way to play video games around the time if you couldn't get a PS2. Apart from being way smaller and having an external power supply, there wasn't too much differences between these two consoles, apart from not having the serial port and the parallel port. But if you had a later model of the PlayStation anyways, these probably weren't on there. But that's all I can really say about the hardware. Let's talk about some accessories. Now, the PlayStation has what I'm going to call 3 official traditional controllers. We're going to start off with the original controller. Now, the original controller is very light. I like it. It's got no analog sticks. The triggers and bumpers are the same size, which I actually like. And there were points with this controller where I would let my friends use the analog controller, and I would rather use this just because I find it way more comfortable. And then we've got the analog controller. Now, the analog controller isn't very popular. I've never actually seen one in the wild, but it's a very weird controller. So it's kind of got like sticks like the PS5, and the grips on the side are a lot more longer than a traditional controller. But apart from that, there isn't much with it. There's no vibration, and yeah, that's all I can really say about it. Then of course you've got the DualShock, which is essentially just the analog controller with vibration, and they made the grips on the side back to like the normal length. And yeah, this controller is perfect. Even though it was used on the PS2 and the PS3, I just prefer the PS1 version, especially the actual PS1 version with like the grey blue analog sticks, buttons, D-pad, and like the off-white colour. I have 2 of these. They're in mint condition and they look really nice. Let's talk about memory cards. Now, not much to say about memory cards. They all have the same amount of space on them. You can get like fake ones that have a bit more space, but they tend to corrupt. Happened to me a lot. I still need to get some official memory cards. You can get these in loads of different colours, loads of different variants. Not really a licensed accessory, but this is quite modern, and it's the Mem Card Pro. Now, the Mem Card Pro is basically a memory card that you can put an SD card in, and it's got Wi-Fi and loads of features. You can like connect to it on your phone and bring your saves back and forth from like your computer to your phone back to the PlayStation. You can back everything up, and it assigns a fresh memory card to each game that you play. So if you go on Gran Turismo, you're going to get a fresh card for Gran Turismo. If you go on like I don't know, a game that takes up 15 blocks, you're going to get a virtual memory card just for that game, which is good because then you're not going to have to delete things or anything like that. It just works seamlessly. I would love to get my hands on one of these, but I'm waiting for the one that matches the PS1 to come back in stock, and I'm definitely going to buy one, probably do a video on it. But it's definitely a great piece of kit to have, especially if you're playing the PS1 quite regularly still and you want to keep like a track of all your saves. This is definitely a nice thing to have. Then of course there's also the link cable that can only be used on old PlayStations, and I think about 5 games support it. I don't know them off the top of my head, so I'll put them on the screen. But Sony called this a arcade-like experience, and actually one of the games was Wipeout, and Wipeout was quite good on it. I've never tried it, but I've seen videos of it, and it's quite interesting. It would have been good if more games supported it, like especially around that time. It would have been great, but you can't be expecting people to drop $299 on the console twice, 2 TVs, 2 copies of the game, as well as the link cable. Like, that just seems like too much. But on the topic of multiplayer, let's talk about the multi-tap. Now, the multi-tap is essentially just like a boomerang shape accessory that plugs into the front of your PlayStation, and it gives you 2 extra memory card slots and 2 extra controller slots, allowing you to play 4-player games like Crash Team Racing. I don't know many games supported by this as well, but I definitely know Crash Team Racing works on there. And you can just essentially play a 4-player co-op basically. Now there are lots more accessories to talk about with the PlayStation 1, like the flight sticks, the racing wheels, all those wacky controllers and memory cards, but these are just like the main ones I would reckon you buy. But now I'm going to talk about my top 10 favourite games on the system and some honourable mentions at the end. For number 10, I'm going to say Monsters Inc. Scare Island. Now, I played this game a lot as a kid, but I played it on the PS2. So this game has a PS2 version, but I had the PS1 disc on my PS2. I don't know why, that's just the way I played this game. It's a third-person platformer where you can play it as Mike or Sully. It's got a very interesting combat system where you essentially collect like these bottles and that charges up like your ability to scare these robots, and then you basically mash buttons to scare the robots. Lots of collectibles, the maps are really good, and if you are wanting to play this game, I would recommend the PS2 version, but I played the PS1 version a lot as a kid. For number 9, I'm going to go with Apocalypse. Now this is like a third-person shooter where you essentially use both the sticks to move and shoot. Lots of different weapons, lots of different enemies. It's quick, it's fast. Such a nice quick game to play. It stars Bruce Willis, which is quite funny, and yeah, not much really else I can say about this game. It's nice and quick. Yeah, definitely a good game. Like, I don't really remember much of the story that went on in this game, but I do remember having a lot of fun with it. For number 8, I'm going to say the Alien Trilogy. Now this is like a first person shooter, kind of reminds me of Doom, just like Apocalypse. There's a variety of weapons, the gameplay feels great, combat feels great. Did really enjoy this game. I never actually finished it, but I did have a lot of fun while playing it. For number 7, I'm going to go with one of the classics, which is Vip Ribbon. Now Vip Ribbon is like a rhythm game kind of. It's very hard to master it, and you can use your own CDs to play music, and the game like creates levels based on the music, and some of these levels get quite complex. The first couple of built-in levels are quite easy. When you're using your own music, the levels tend to get a lot harder. You'll end up having to press like 2 or 3 buttons at once, and there's not really like an easy way to remember the buttons you need to press. You press a certain button and that kind of does a move, and you have to match up these moves with the world around you. So like there's like walls and like these spinny wheels, and you've got to do the right move to get past those, and if you don't do the right move you take damage, and if you take a lot of damage you die and the level restarts. But yeah, this is definitely a different one for me. Still haven't mastered this game, but it is really fun. It's quite a pricey one these days, but if you can get hold of a copy, definitely try it with your own music CDs. It's a lot of fun. For number 6, I'm going to go with Tekken 3. Now, Tekken is a really good fighting series. This is the last one that came out on the PS1, I believe, so like this is the most best looking one in my opinion. The one that I played the most on here. Lots of different characters. It's great to play with your friends. The maps and arenas are really nice. The moves are quite good. A very nice fluid game. Probably one of the best fighting games on the PlayStation in my opinion. For number 5, I don't know if people are really going to agree with this one, but Simpsons Wrestling. It's got a really nice art style like the other Simpsons games. Again, it's a lot of fun to play with your friends. It's nice and quick, lots of different characters. It's definitely a lot of fun to play. Not much else I can say about this one. It's a wrestling game, it's Simpsons, it's colourful, all the characters are there that you know and love. It's a great game. Now for number 4, I'm going to go with Ape Escape. Now this game requires you to have a DualShock controller, but they're quite common to get. The graphics are nice, fun and bright, and the objective is the game really is you go around these different maps and you use these different gadgets to solve puzzles, and you basically just catch these apes. Once you catch all the apes and do all the collectibles, the level's pretty much finished, and you can actually play this on the PS4 and PS5 if you've got PS Plus Premium, or I think you can actually just buy the game. I think you can buy it on PS3 as well, on the digital store, but I'm not too sure. I don't really check it for PS1 games. I just have them all physically. But yeah, Ape Escape, really good. For number 3, I'm going to go with Destruction Derby 2. There's a few other Destruction Derby games on the PS1, but I had the most fun on Destruction Derby 2. Lots of great racing tracks. The arena mode's fun, where you just smash it into the cars. But yeah, I do like this game. It's quite unique, and I've found that a lot of the races go a lot differently each time I play it. Sometimes it might be a nice clean race, and sometimes we're 30 seconds in and everyone's just smashing into each other, and it's not really a clean race. This is great to play with your friends. The cars feel really smooth and great. Yeah, it's a very good game. For number 2, I'm going to go with Crash Team Racing. Now, I played this game a lot as a kid, and I still love it to this day. A few years ago, I played the remaster on PS4, and this game still lives up. If you've got the multi-tap like we were saying earlier, you can play this game 4 players. This game's great, lots of levels, lots of power-ups, great to play with your friends. The bosses are great, the handling's great. Definitely a great competitor to Mario Kart. Now, for my number 1 spot, I'm definitely going to go with Gran Turismo 2. Now, I would have said Gran Turismo 1, but just in terms of the tracks and the cars and the graphics, Gran Turismo 2 looks a lot better. does come on 2 discs, which you have one for the arcade mode, which is where you just race, and then you've got the Gran Turismo mode, which is essentially where you do all your licenses, you earn your money, you buy your cars, and you compete in the championships. And yeah, there's a lot of content, lots of tracks, lots of cars. Again, just like most of these games, they are really good to play with your friends, and you can get a lot of hours of content in the Gran Turismo mode, whether that's buying different cars, trying different things. There's definitely lots of content in this game. And now I'm just going to go through some honorable mentions. These are games that I like, but I couldn't really figure out where to put them in the list, or I thought about putting them in the list, but I just thought of other games and thought that they should be on the list. So Crash Bandicoot. Now, Crash Bandicoot is just one of those games for the PlayStation. If you've ever been on a PlayStation or used one, or any PlayStation in general, you've probably played Crash Bandicoot. It's just one of those games that you need to play if you play on a PlayStation. Yeah, very good little platformer. The third one is definitely my favourite. I didn't really like the second one, and the first one's just iconic. Then I'm going to go with Bushido Blade. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, Bushido Blade is a very quick fighting game. It's essentially just you use swords, and the battles are like over in seconds. It's really realistic, and yeah, it's just a nice game. Like, this one's also really good to play with friends. You can have a few matches just within like the space of a couple of minutes. Very quick, and yeah, very fun. But yeah, that's the Sony PlayStation 1 and some of my favourite games. But yeah, the Sony PlayStation was definitely a leap in technology that the gaming world needed. But not as much as the PS2, that I'll probably talk about in another video. But Sony, Disney, Pixar. Let me play Monsters Inc. Scare Island on the PS5. I know it's possible because Toy Story 2's on there.